It is a rhetorical question. Have you ever had to do something when you don't feel like it? I mean, Amy, I'm looking at you.
Oh,
You can't see her. Have you ever had to do something at
she
Church
works for
Answers?
you, Dad.
Yeah, I know. She's like every day she has to do something even when she does not feel like it every single day. And Sam, have you ever had to do anything either at Church Answers or at your church when you don't feel like it? Yeah, probably. Sometimes we do podcasts when we don't feel like it because we have to have a schedule. But I have to say, most of the time, podcast is a good reprieve.
I'll agree. With all the things that go on during the day and during the week, this is one of the highlights. But even with podcasting, sometimes you don't feel like getting on the radio. You're sick. You got nasal congestion or something. But, preaching, I think, is something that we need to talk about. We're going to do that on this episode.
So we're going to be talking about preaching when you don't feel like it. In case you did not know, you're at Rainer on Leadership, your online home for leadership lessons and advice for the local church. My name is Thom Rainer, and I am joined by Sam Rainer, and we're going to be taking up that subject. But before we do, we want to talk about going to a seminary because you should feel like it. Oh, by the way,
should you go to seminary
What?
even when you don't feel like it? Yes, and there's only one choice.
Here is your choice. By the way, I am working with one of our platinum clients, which is part of our coaching, and he has decided he wants to go to Southeastern, and so I'm sending him to what's his name? Your middle brother, Art. I'm sending him to your middle brother, Art, so he can get him started in the admissions process.
You know who else just applied at Southeastern?
Who?
My student pastor, Devon.
Oh, good for Devon.
Mm-hmm.
Good for Devon.
I've got a funny story about that. It's sebts.edu. And if you miss one of the letters, you go to another seminary.
Or if you
he applied there by accident and then had to unapply and then go apply at the real seminary. That's not a hyperbole. That really did happen.
Oh, bless him. Let me just give the old Baptist bless his heart and just kind of move on from there. Hey, we do want to say thank you, Southeastern, for sponsoring us, a long-time sponsor. They're committed to getting you the training and education you need anywhere around the world. And hey, if you want to apply at Southeastern, which you should, even if you don't feel like it, get your application filled right now. Put in the word Church Answers. That is one word, no space, Church Answers, no space, on your application, and they will waive the application fee. So whatever your stage or journey may be right now, wherever you're looking at as a possibility for further training and ministry, we commend to you Southeastern strongly. You'll find it's not just about theological education. It's about ministry preparation. Explore degrees, schedule a visit, or visit online at
sebts.edu. You know what, Devon?
And just go to the show notes. You never have to really listen to us because Amy puts everything in the show notes anyway.
Do you know what degree he's getting? What he's going to pursue?
A Master of Arts in Church Revitalization.
Yeah, I might have had a little influence there. But the Master of Arts in Church Revitalization is a great. Go check it out. It's a huge need. The pathway to get a degree is pretty easy on that one. It's not easy courses or anything, but it's a good pathway. And
that's a good pathway for sure.
And you'll have a degree that is very high demand. So very few schools offer it the way that Southeastern does. It's good program.
Yeah, they do. I think it's 36 hours. All can be done all online.
36 or 37. I forget the exact number, but yes.
Yeah, it may have been 37 with that 1 hour course. You're right. Coincidentally, that's where I recommend our platinum client, and he's in the application process for that as well. So we didn't know that each of us were recommending a person to Southeastern. Did you send him to, what's his name?
My brother?
Art.
The other one?
Art, yeah, your brother. Yeah,
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, and just for the sake of listeners, like before we did this spot, which has gone on too long now, we didn't know that what we were going to say this. I didn't know you recommended somebody. You didn't know I recommended somebody.
This is a little impromptu. Absolutely. Hey, it's a great topic, preaching when you don't feel like it. Let's talk about it, Sam. I'm guessing you preach, if you count maybe teaching on Wednesday night, you're going to preach close to 200 times a year.
Yes, it's in that range, 150 to, I'd say Not 200. I'd say more 125 to 150. Teaching, preaching,
Okay.
some, I'm standing in front of a group in some way, shape, or form. It used to be
Well, the
200.
reason I did that, you do 3 on Sunday morning.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I'm just counting those as one. So, oh
No,
yeah.
no, I'm talking about all the different
Oh,
times. It's closer
well
to
over
200.
200, if that's the case.
Yeah. So there's probably a few times you don't feel like it, like Christmas Eve when you were feeling so badly, you hardly remembered that you were there?
I've had a
Or is
few.
that
I've had a few
hyperbole?
of those moments. I've puked in the pulp. Well, I puked.
Right after you got out of the
No, no.
puke.
Well,
Puke,
okay.
puke,
So this
puke,
was
puke, puke, but pulpit,
no,
puke
no, no, no,
pit.
no. This was my first full time gig, and after this Sunday, they all call me the puking preacher. Um, the sound guy fell asleep like he always does every week. I was completely incoherent because I had a terrible stomach bug. I still tried to preach through it. I concluded my sermon because I listened to the audio afterwards. I don't even remember this, but I said, and that concludes my sermon. And I before the invitation, I just said,
You may extinguish the candle.
you may extinguish the flame. That's from a previous episode about Christmas Eve services. If you want to go check that out, that concludes my sermon. And I walked off the stage, and because the sound guy was asleep, usually the music would wake him up and he would know to turn my mic off, but nobody knew what was going on. So the mic didn't turn off. I passed out, puked. As I'm passed out, I wake up, and there's the chairman of the deacons and the chairwoman of the personnel committee cleaning up around me. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? Little did I know. I found out. I found out very quickly.
They were doing what you did. So the point is, sometimes you don't feel like it, and you can circumvent some of these. Obviously, if you have a stomach virus, not a whole lot you can do, but you can get a good night's rest, you can exercise, and certainly you can pray.
Yeah, I mean, there are some obvious things that we just miss. So I try to eat lightly on Saturday night. I try to eat uh, in a way on Sunday morning that I'm not going to have an upset stomach. And I'm careful with what I eat Saturday night, Sunday morning. I try to get a good night's rest. And if you're in a regular pattern of exercising, you can head off a lot of this at the pass when it comes to just not feeling well. So if you're eating real heavy every Saturday night and getting 4 hours of sleep and then trying to preach Sunday morning, well, there's a reason you probably don't feel well on Sunday mornings when you're preaching. So those are
Well,
obvious. The other thing that I'd say is if you're sick, just be honest.
yeah, I saw you mention that in the show notes. So you think that you should come into the pulpit and just tell the people you're not feeling that great.
Yeah, if it's to that degree, where, sometimes, particularly in our environment today, if you're not feeling well and you tell people that, they panic. But
Exit,
yeah,
mass
yeah.
exit.
So you do have
Don't trample the people as you go out.
you do have to be careful. Assuming it's not COVID or COVID related, and you know that, sometimes just because you have just because you have butterflies doesn't mean that you need to tell everyone. But if you're really not feeling well and it's noticeable, I think you can just say, guys, I'm here today. I'm not feeling 100%, but God's word is important. I'm going to teach it and preach it as best I can, and then just roll right into your sermon. And I think that there's an endearment factor to that. There's an honesty factor. You probably might say that once every couple of years. That's kind of what I'm thinking. It's not every fourth week or something. Then you just become dramatic. But if you're really not feeling well and you're just trying to push through it, just tell people. And I think that your church, unless your church is just full of curmudgeons, they're gonna be okay with it. There's nothing to be
Hey,
embarrassed about there.
I doubt you have a memory of this because this would have been 1987, and I was a pastor in Jeffersontown, Kentucky. I mean, I know you remember the church, but you would have been 7 years old at the time, so you may not remember the incident. I got up and told people that I had a little bit of sore throat and it sounded a little bit raspy. And about 15 minutes into the sermon, which would have been 2/3 of the way done for me, my mouth was moving, but no words were coming out. And I was trying my best to get anything.
He's speaking in tongues. He's speaking in tongues.
Yes. Yeah. And so not an active deacon, but one of our deacons just stood up and said, "Folks, he can't talk. That does it. Y'all have a great day." And everybody left.
At least he didn't try to put words in your mouth like a ventriloquist.
Oh gosh, that would have been terrible. But I mean, I was, and I was only doing one Sunday morning service, so it wasn't like I'm doing 3 Sunday mornings like you are. And I was doing that one, and it just stopped. All pastors and preachers have stories. I know. I went to social media not too long ago and asked for stories about, uh, well, not stories, about advice on doing funeral sermons. It wasn't really stories, but it was a lot of good things. One guy, this off topic. I'll come back to this. Pull it back in, Tom. But one guy, one pastor said he had to tackle someone during an open mic at a funeral because he wouldn't let go of it, the mic. And he was inebriated and incoherent, except for a few words that are in the common vernacular of profanity. And he was letting him go, and he would not let go of the mic. They tried to take it from him. He was holding on to it, and they finally had to pull him
Now
away.
that you mention it, I've actually had not quite like that. I've never had to tackle anyone. I have had to physically remove a microphone from someone before, and I have encountered several inebriated people at funerals. That is something that I have seen. So not a surprise. Now, if you're not feeling well because you're hungover as a pastor on Sunday morning, that's
That's a different
that's a
story.
you need to go seek help. Like, not a good thing.
So, tell me what you do about spiritual battles. If you're going to be talking about those, do you talk about them in the sermon? What do you do with that?
Yeah, so sometimes you don't feel well. There's just you have a cold, you have a sore throat, you're coming off a case of the flu or something like that. So sometimes it's physical, other times it's spiritual. And I would just say use your spiritual battles to illustrate sermons, but be careful about sharing too much publicly. It's okay to be transparent. In fact, I think we need more transparency from pastors, not less. But if you're up there sharing deep, dark struggles every week as a pastor, you're not really leading. You're using your church as a counseling session, and that's not helpful to anybody. It's not helpful to you. It's not helpful to your congregation. So I would say there needs to be an openness to you talking about spiritual battles, and maybe that's why you're feeling a certain way. But just be careful and be strategic with how you share and when you share and how often that you share stuff like that.
Sam, I guess this has happened in as many churches as there are around the world and many Sundays as there have been, but it's the only case I know of it. One of the teaching pastors that he preached about once a month, maybe on occasion twice a month at a church with which I'm familiar, said that he used the pulpit for therapy. And so he would preach about his problems and how bad things are in his life. And he said he would try to get the grace of God and the mercy of God and the strength of God in there somewhere, but he was very open that he preached about. You know, he was using it for therapy, and when anybody found out ahead of time that he was going to be preaching, attendance would dip as much as 50%.
It's not a surprise if that's what he's doing. Uh,
Yes.
Not helpful to anyone. And that's, it may make you feel better in the moment to be able to share from the pulpit in that way. But that's an extreme case of poor leadership. That's not preaching. God can use your battles to bring victory to somebody. And you may be open and, just say, hey guys, this has been a struggle of late. And then you share something and then God will use that. But if you're doing it every week and you're using the pulpit as therapy, well, again, that's you not being a very good spiritual leader. So I would say be transparent, but be strategic as well. And you're there to edify the saints and to give glory to God through your preaching. You're not there to make yourself feel better. And if that's how you're using your preaching, then it's not really preaching.
Speaking of strategy, which you said be strategic, there are parts of a sermon typically where you're going to have more emotional enthusiasm, excitement. And if you're not feeling well, if you're feeling a little bit weak, you indicated you can use that as a point where you are emphasizing more and you're showing a little more of your strength than maybe the rest of the sermon.
Yeah, let's say you're having an off day. It could be spiritual, emotional, or physical, and you just know you're not all there, and it's just you can tell that the way that you present is not going to be up to your standards. There are Sundays like that. Now, if you have them often, that's a problem, and you probably need to talk to somebody. But every now and then, you have that struggle as a preacher, as a pastor. I would just say focus on the part of the sermon that excites you and really dig into that. If you can grab onto something that's, part of what God has told you to say anyway, and really focus on that and kind of bring yourself out of a funk or out of just not feeling well, then, I would say go for it. Focus on what you can feel instead of what you don't feel. And if you have to do that every now and then, there's nothing wrong with that. Again, most pastors, they're preaching between 40 and 52 weeks a year. If you're a lead teaching pastor, I preach about 51 weeks a year, because even when I'm gone from my church, I'm usually preaching somewhere else. So it's usually only about one Sunday a year I'm out of the pulpit. Goodness, and over the course of a year on any given Sunday, I might have one or two Sundays where I'm just really not feeling it for whatever reason. So you got to go to the thing that gets you excited. And if you do that on occasion, again, once or twice a year, not an issue. Roll into, you
I,
may even change
I,
your whole sermon just to adapt. And again, there's nothing wrong with that if you do it on occasion.
I will tell you and Amy, the pastor in church, once the record button is off, but I'll let it remain in
Oh, now you're
anonymity
going to
for
leave
right now.
everybody hanging.
I don't care. I don't care. I am not. I would leave this pastor hanging if I
Yeah, you don't want to
if,
throw
if I
anybody under the
didn't.
bus.
And anyway, it was in a small rural church, and I was visiting with family, and I went in, and he was unduly excited that I was there, and he said, "Why don't you preach?" Why? I said, "No, I don't want to preach. I'm just here." And he said, "Well, I got to tell you." He said, "Dr. Rayner." He said, "Dr. Rayner, I got to tell you, this is the sermon I don't want to preach this year." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he said, "Deacons are making me preach my annual stewardship sermon, and I hate it. And I just hate it." And I said, "Well," I was about to use his name. I said, "Well, why don't you just you know focus on the passage a little bit, and then maybe talk about something that's going on that really excites you?" Well, the problem is he didn't make a good segue. He was talking about giving and stewardship, and then he just paused and kind of looked at me like, "I'm going to do what Rainer said." He says, "But we all love Jesus, and if you love Jesus, you're going to be talking about him. We're going to talk about personal evangelism for just a moment." Just totally out of the blue. And he kind of realized he'd gotten off track. He said, "But let's get back to money. I don't like talking about that." In the sermon. In the sermon. He loved personal evangelism. He needed our friends at church growth services, so you don't have to
Oh,
have to have a fake sermon type of thing.
yeah. Now that
What you might say? Oh,
Well, because I just had breakfast with church growth services, and they're pretty awesome. They're pretty awesome at what they do.
I know. What? Just say a few words about them before we move on. What I love about them is they are the stewardship company. They're the fundraising company. They're the help your budget grow company that's for every church. There's some that just feel like they're for the larger churches. They're for every church. I don't look at me. I said I was going to talking about someone else getting off track, and I got totally off track about when you don't feel like preaching. But that was kind of a good
Well, I think
talk about.
not everyone does want to preach generosity, and that can be a struggle. And it's something that, often, I don't mind it so much, but, maybe I'm just weird. I know a lot of preachers don't like it. You need to reach out to Mike Stottlemyre, Church Growth Services. That's who I had breakfast with. He's a former pastor. Oh, that's weird, really weird to say like former pastor, because he's still very much in a pastoral role. But
I understand what you're saying,
man,
but he's leading a ministry organization
they
now.
I
Because-
they're based mainly in the Midwest, but they're expanding out into several different areas. And, if you're looking to talk to somebody about generosity, they're the ones to talk to.
Yep, I'm gonna get us back on track soon because I was the one that
We've
got
been
us
chasing
off
some
track.
rabbits.
Yeah. Also, when you don't feel like preaching, it's okay. The metaphor that is often used among preachers is a baseball metaphor. Was it a single, double, triple, or home run, or did you strike out? And you like baseball, so the baseball metaphors are apt. It's okay to hit a single at times. In fact, if you hit a home run every time, your home runs are not going to be that special. It's okay to hit a
If
single.
you can hit a home run every time you preach, listen, go for it. I mean, if you're the Babe Ruth of preaching, hey, you're up there with Spurgeon. So I got I got mad respect for you. But for most of us normal people, singles and doubles are more the norm. Striking out every now and then is going to happen. And yeah, just be willing to hit a single. If you're not feeling well, and if it's just not a good day for you for whatever reason, just get up there and try to put the ball in play, to use the baseball analogy. Don't swing for the fences.
Yes.
There's no sense in you trying to swing for the fences when you're not feeling well. Get up there, hit a single, do what you got to do to get on base. Use that limited energy that you have to muster through this decent message. And it may be one that's forgettable. We don't always preach memorable sermons, but if you get up there and you strike out miserably, that is memorable. And those are you don't want to be memorable for the wrong reasons. You want to be memorable for the right reasons. If you aren't feeling well and you have the stomach bug, don't try to preach through it, because you will end up on the floor in the back
Puking.
room with the chairman of the deacons and the chairwoman of the personnel committee scrubbing your puke.
Cleaning up your vomit.
Yeah.
Yes.
And let me tell you, it would have been much better for me to bring a pinch hitter in that day, because I was memorable for all the wrong reasons. Yeah. Don't swing for the fences when you're feeling badly.
You still are. By the way, I have often said I've never heard Alistair Begg preach a bad sermon. And I realized that sometimes I listen to him and I don't remember anything he said, but I love the accent, so it just sounds great.
He does have the advantage of his accent. And yes, that would be an example of a preacher who has the ability to hit a home run on every Sunday. One of my favorites as well. Great man of God. Glad he's preaching. I've learned a lot from him.
I do too. Hey, let's thank our sponsor, NLT Life Application Bible, from the folks at Tyndale, Sam.
Yeah, guess what we did recently?
You switched over to the NLT.
We did. We moved all our pew Bibles. We are encouraging our people to read the NLT this year because we're reading through the Bible together as a church. I love the New Living Translation. It's readable. It's accurate. It's great for our children's ministry, our student ministry. The adults are liking it. So we as a church have switched over to the NLT, and it's been received extraordinarily well. People just love reading the translation, and that's what you want, right? People aren't reading their Bibles. Let's just be real. They're not reading their Bibles. And
Exactly.
we have found that the NLT is the one that people go, you know what? This is readable. I'll read it. Like, great. Let's do that. And the Life Application Study Bible is a good way for them not to only read, but to digest the material. And this is
it's the number one. It's the number one study Bible out there. It's doing a great job. Y'all should have heard Sam when he announced the translation. He got up there and said, "Folks, we got a new translation. What it's going to be? It's for you. It's for me. It is the NLT."
Yeah, let's never do that again. That's not what I said. That's not how I said it. And you should never do that again.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The NLT Life Application Study Bible was the winner of the 2020 Christian Book Award, Bible of the Year, Christian Book Award for Bible of the Year. That's what I'm trying to say. We've got a link in the show notes. You can click on that. You should, I know you've got a lot of application study Bibles. This is one that needs to be one of your go-tos. It's a great Bible. And the NLT is a great translation.
Yep. All right. We'll wrap it up, Sam.
Thanks again, all of you listeners, for joining us today on Rainer on Leadership. You can watch on YouTube. You can subscribe on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app. We're everywhere. You can also join us online at churchanswers.com, where we are growing healthy churches together.